Global layoffs are coming for your jobs, and it seems like nobody is safe at this point. Even with the massive GDP surprising many analysts, it's still very clear that layoffs continue to hound the market, the labor market in particular. And while we've seen a lot of layoffs in huge companies like Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, just to name a few, it's very clear that even more of them are coming.
A dozen major companies announced job cuts, including Amazon and Google's parent Alphabet. The two tech giants are reversing the hiring sprees they went on during the pandemic and cutting hundreds of jobs across multiple divisions. Other companies announcing layoffs so far this year include BlackRock, Universal Music Group, Duolingo, and the messaging platform Discord. For some companies, these job cuts are on top of larger layoff announcements that began last year. And while inflation is coming down, many businesses are still dealing with persistently high prices for things like manufacturing, materials, and shipping.
There comes a time when you have to ask if you're safe from these cuts, especially as more and more Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and they're using their credit cards, American Express, Visa, you name it, just to get by. Now, you would think that video games would be safe from layoffs, right? But that's just not the case, as Microsoft has recently announced thousands of cuts.
What do we know about the details, Jason?
Yeah, we are facing a real chaos all across the company. I'm getting texts still right now. I'm getting texts from people saying they don't know if they're being laid off. Some people are finding out because their Slack is deactivated. I'm told by a Blizzard spokesperson that everybody should find out by the end of the day if they'll have jobs or not, all 1,900 people. But yeah, it's just chaos over there right now.
What took me by surprise, and I'm interested if it took you as well, is some of the senior executives that are on the out. In particular, the president, Mike Barra, who I think previously said he wasn't for going and he was going to have to be dragged out, and as well as the chief design officer, who is actually a co-founder.
Yeah, Alan Adham. He is. He's called a co-founder. Technically, he is, but he's really the founder of Blizzard. He's the kind of guy, and was for a very long time.
And it's not just Blizzard though. It's also affecting their Xbox division as well as their holding company ZeniMax. Now, the reason for these layoffs was that Microsoft needed to create, in their words, a sustainable cost structure that would be able to support the whole of their growing business. Now, it is worth noting that Microsoft recently had a record high valuation of the company of over $3 trillion. This is the second company to do so after Apple. However, it's not just tech and gaming companies, folks. It's also affecting the apparel retailers. So check this out, guys. Levi Strauss, you remember the old school jeans company from back in the day? Yeah. So Levi Strauss recently announced that they're planning to cut at least 10% to 15% off of their global corporate workforce. Now, as of late last year, they had around 19,000 employees or so. It's not certain how many of them work in corporate for the company, but let's just say that we know that this one move will lead to around $110 to $120 million in restructuring charges for the first quarter. Now, this, of course, is horrible news for their employees, especially as they're talking in terms of the global workforce. However, this is fast becoming a norm nowadays. So Paramount Global, they have also recently discussed how they're also looking at workforce reductions. I really hate saying that phrase, workforce reductions. This is never a good thing, guys. Now, the same with Levi Strauss. They're also reviewing cuts that will ultimately span the entire globe. Now, since the start of the year, we've seen at least 21,000 workers to be laid off, around 76 different tech companies, which begs the question, where is the strong economy that we keep hearing about? I mean, seriously, government keeps on saying, hey, the economy's strong, we're good. Which reminds me of Bank of America. So get this. So Bank of America is now sending warning letters to their workers who aren't coming into the office. Can you believe that? So these letters are also called letters of education. So do with that information what you will. But the most important part here is that they gave these workers 2 weeks from the date that they received the letter to show up for work or face some form of disciplinary action. Now, I'm not sure how these workers are going to respond. Chances are they're not going to be very happy. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. If you're getting your job done and you're working remotely, leave these people alone. This is literally just a power call, a power struggle. Some of these big corporations, they just want to make your life a living hell. And they want people to quit rather than them having to fire people. So even though you're doing an exceptional job working from home, working remotely, they know that tons of people, millions of Americans don't want to have to come back in the office to do the exact same thing. They don't want to waste their time driving in traffic, being away from their families. They would rather have people come back in the office. Why? Because they know millions of people will be like, man, screw this. I quit. Now the company doesn't have to fire the employee. The company doesn't have to lay them off. They don't have to get the negative PR, and these companies won't have to pay for unemployment insurance. So it's really a big trap, folks. Much like the workers of Daily News, as the paper faced the first work stoppage in over 30 years. Check this out.
On and off rain isn't getting in the way of staff picketing here on Broadway at 39th Street. This is a 24-hour walkout with staff who say they're doing this to send a message they care about this city, their jobs, and this newspaper. The Daily News Union says staff walked off the job because they're fed up with Alden Global Capital's constant cuts and apparent commitment to shrinking the paper. Alden Global Capital is a hedge fund which purchased Tribune Publishing in 2021, the company that previously owned the newspaper and many others. The union says management is trying to cut overtime across the board, but explained because staff is small, Metro reporters often work overtime to provide the best possible coverage. The Daily News has been around for more than a century. This is their first walkout since 1991.
These incremental cuts that are going on year after year, this nickel and diming, stringing out of the union negotiations for now more than 2 years. The company has shown no urgency in coming to a contract. It's just making it very difficult to cover a city of 9 million with the few reporters that we have.
Now, some argue that not many people read newspapers anymore, and I would have to agree with that. I don't remember the last time I've even seen a newspaper, let alone read one. Meanwhile, others say that people should just be thankful to have their jobs under these conditions. But what do you guys think about it? Because some workers at Apple are at a crossroads. You see, they're giving some of their employees in San Francisco a very tough choice. Either move all the way the heck over to Austin, Texas, or just go ahead and get fired. Now, I know it sounds harsh, but these workers were also told that they could technically apply for other jobs within the company to avoid having to move. Now, if you say yes to moving to Texas, then they're going to be providing them with $7,000 each to relocate. So that's pretty cool. I will say that. Now, with all of this stuff going on right now, with all this stuff happening, it's kind of amazing to see that our GDP somehow surpassed all expectations, even ones that many of us had since we've seen what's really going on.
The US economy has brushed aside the threat of a recession, growing at a 3.3% annualized rate in the fourth quarter. The world's largest economy was lifted by stronger than expected consumer spending, and the Commerce Department's GDP report shows inflationary pressures are falling. Analysts believe the strong fourth quarter growth has continued into the new year, which suggests the US Federal Reserve will need to cut interest rates later this year.
Do any of you guys think that rates will be cut for 2024? I mean, seriously. Now, the problem with that is that the Fed may end up creating the exact same problem all over again and have to face rising inflation, which can be a nightmare for many Americans. It's also worth noting that we just went through the holiday season, meaning that consumer spending would obviously be up, like everybody's out buying like gifts and stuff like that, right? Something that would be kind of difficult to sustain in 2024, given that thousands of Americans continue to lose their jobs. Not to mention how inflation has negatively affected the money that we do have. But what do you guys think about all this? Now, before I go, I just want to thank you guys for hitting the like button. Thank you so much for sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel a lot. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.